Greetings! It is I, Tensis Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome once more. We're diving back into the world of space and stars with Starfinder. I apologize for my fan noise. It's going to be going on today. It is hot here in reality. This is coming up and being recorded a few days before it's being put up, streamed and recorded a few days before it goes up on YouTube. It's very hot in the US and in my portion of it, so fan will be on. I can probably turn it down one notch so it's a little better. Hopefully it's a little better for you. For a while, I might turn it back on. But anyway, yeah, Starfinder today. We're going to be talking about some of the species / ancestries you can play through today. I've put together a selection of those in the core rulebook. These are the legacy ones, and totaling about 24 to 30 different species. We'll go through more of them on extra days after that, which will just go through the general list of what's been released so far. I'll try to finish through as many of these as possible, kind of count and divide them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to talk about some descriptions of them, a little bit of their backstory, and a little bit of their abilities. I'm not going to go too far into depths here. The big thing I can say is here, Archives of Nethys does have a pretty good database of this information. I don't know if they're perfect, because I'm not as familiar with their Starfinder section on things, but I'm using this as my basis for a lot. I do have the core book and some of the books that have some of these species, but I wanted to go to a bit more of an in-depth listing, so I used for my research Archives of Nethys, which is something I've always suggested for anybody playing any of the Pathfinder Paizo games. Pathfinder 1st Edition, Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Starfinder, all really good there. Now, again, the PSFR DD20 is pretty good for Pathfinder 1st Edition too, but online resources have always been so good that you don't really need books for these Paizo games. I've talked about that a lot, so that's why I'm using it. Not that I don't have PDFs of these books, because I supported Humbles and gotten them. But if you're looking to follow along with me, I recommend going to the Archives of Nethys. That's, again, and I'm not going to go to everything there. I'm going to go over these basics, a little bit of each of them, maybe spend a few minutes on each of these different ones. Some of them, the core ones, have 2 pictures that I'll try to switch between. But we'll do our best to go through all of them in a timely manner. I'm trying not to boil alive in my own juices, and hopefully you'll get some ideas about what you can play, what the differences and stuff is about them. So, that's where I hope you'll enjoy it. So, I'll drink to that, though. Okay. Why don't we start with, as I said, the core book species. We'll do this one for it. And we'll start with androids. So, androids are biomechanical constructs. That's the easiest way to describe them at first. They seem very human at first glance, and their original older editions were more biological. But more modern times, things like metal skeletons, synthetic organs, mixed with living flesh is some kind of it shows up a lot more. The main thing is, of course, the tattoo-like circuitry that goes through their skin, especially when they're operating at full power. Most of the time, though, beyond this, design, role, personality actually affect the appearance of an android. There are those that definitely try to blend in with things like human society since they look mostly like that. Others that show off their mechanical nature. So, they have a very huge customization to their entire thing. They don't reproduce. They don't really have a need for gender, though some identify as male or females. Others are more fluid. There's a lot to it that is very unique. And they're assembled using nanites, tiny machines. And they do have integrated souls. So they do technically have a soul. and you're fully grown at time of birth. Good things to know about an android. So, the basic information on androids is they were on Golarion before the time of the Gap. There was indications that they came from a distant star system, crash landed on Golarion. This matches with, if you listen to some of my species guides on Pathfinder and Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I've talked about androids in the past in those systems. It's kind of the same. Crash landed on Golarion, became part of the planet, and then the Gap happened where Golarion disappears, and we're into the Pact Worlds time period in Starfinder. So, creation and mass production of androids in this distant future is not a hidden technology anymore. So, there certainly has been more beings creating more of them, unfortunately. Not in the best of nature, as things like skilled cheap labor, hazardous work. And this was for about 150 years. Then there was the Thrist Rebellion, and android revolts, and the automatons, Holmec, a legendary speech. And after this, androids are now recognized as independent citizens. So it's sort of like we have the Gap, we go into this technological future, the secret of how to make androids and reproduce them is discovered, androids are still around, new androids are being made as basically a new version of slavery. They're being created, and probably with a combination of those from like the old days and, now newer androids getting their independence and their citizenry has been an important thing. So there are still illegal slave androids in places, and those that force newborn androids to work off their creation expenses. So, yeah, Absalom Station is a important part. The machine cities of Abalon and Disparia's Freedom are the three areas that they do tend to go to, because those are areas that they can find their freedom. So, and because the last 150 years in the newer time period has been a very time of bondage, they remember that. It's strongly ingrained in android culture and the way that they think, and probably a distrust of, honestly, humans and other ones that are their oppressors. So it's a new world for them finally again, while, honestly, in the old days they just hid. So if you want to play one, ability modifiers are bonuses to Dex and Intelligence, penalties to Charisma for hit points. They are constructed, meaning you get some bonuses. They're count as both constructs and humanoids. They got really great vision, which is dark vision, low light vision. They are kind of emotions are very bottled up, kind of dampened a little bit, so they have some things based on that. And they get an upgrade slot, which is important to note, too. There are alternate ability things depending on what you want to do for different builds for androids you can check out on the Archives of Nethys. I forgot to put the other android image there, just to check him out there. Again, though there are those that identify as male or female, there are those that are just gender fluid or genderless. Each is to their own a little bit, too. But let's move on. And let's talk about a fairly major species. Guess what? Humans. Yeah, good old friends, humans. They are... with modern human society, there isn't a lot of differences between hereditary, genetics, and stuff like that. Humans still adapt to very different environments. There's cybernetic augmentations, alien implants. Zero-G asteroid miners can have elongated limbs. And still the ethnic groups of Golarion and their descendants can still be there. There are ancient cultural groups that do exist. the crimson-hued humans native to Akaton, the humans of the Aslanti Star Empire. These are recognized as ancient cultural groups that still have connections to original Galarian back in the day. And yes, humans are originally from Galarian, spread out to the rest of the solar system. Akaton is a big planet. Yeah. Absalom Station is still the center of human culture because it's kind of like where Galarian used to be. But humans can be found everywhere. They integrate into alien societies, create colonies, new homeworlds of their own. They do what they do best and breed and fuck all over the place. So they are one of the most common races in the pack worlds, at very least. Again, they were still the hardest hit by the gap. They had the least amount of evidence left over about what the hell was going on in their societies and stuff like that, and they had to reconstruct the most out of everybody. It's sort of like things like longer-lived races can have more beings that, know they forgot periods of the gap and stuff like that. Humans didn't live through that. There are documents related to ancient human history on places like Absalom Station. If they believe in a lot of that stuff, it's kind of debated a lot of times. It is a chance to connect with origins, names, philosophies, ancient information. It's still seen as backwards, and a lot of humans look at it like the world vanished for a reason. You have a future to face. Don't look at this kind of stuff. So, it is the thing that a lot of this, there really isn't a exact human culture. There's a lot of diverse societies. Jeez, English today. A lot of flux, many different governments, and just as humans, if we talk about Galarian during the Pathfinder worlds, comparativities, they're very much in flux. And even a lot of the older cultures that still kind of have some links to humanity still changing and adapting as they go. Yeah. What do humans get as a person in Starfinder? You get 2 to ability score of your choice, a bonus to that, 4 hit points, bonus feat, bonus skill rank at each level. Pretty standard human stuff. There are some alternate adjustments and things like that, like alternate ability adjustments from where you kind of go, and some alternate racial traits that do exist for humans. You want to check them out yourself. But that is our good friends humans, still remaining as they've ever been. Let's talk about the Kasatha. So, their origin is from a star beyond the pack worlds. They're 4 arms, noble, mysterious people, oftentimes seen as anachronistic warriors with ancient wisdom, strange traditions. They're gray-skinned, pure black eyes, protruding nose, head is smooth and elongated, skin that stretches tight to the skull, extending backwards far beyond the edge of the neck. They're very lean in comparison to something like humans, but have more advanced muscular fibers that give them a lot of strength. And there is physical difference between the two genders, but they're slight enough that, unfortunately, a lot of other species don't notice the difference. You'd have to understand the Kasathas to notice the difference between a male and a female one. So their planet was Kasatha. It was a desert planet orbiting a red giant. They knew their sun was near death, is the thing. The problem was there was this tradition in their culture that the idea of colonizing another world wasn't good for them. It was something to overcome. And that lasted until shortly after the gap. It was their progenitor race, the plane-hopping witch-weirds, returned them and told them of a perfect world for them, Akitan. So, yes. They are descended from witchweirds, which are a plane-hopping species that just happen to settle on this planet. So, they constructed slower-than-light colony ships to depart for this promised land, and it took hundreds of years. The worshipped Idari arrived in the Packworld systems. Local technology had advanced, and the Cathatran Juggernaut found itself too vulnerable to risk invading Akitan. So, rather than attack and take over this planet that was their promised land, they just peacefully immigrated to that and the surrounding worlds. And there are still those that are aboard the Idari, and that orbits between Verces and Desparia, with rotating drum farms and manufacturing bays to trade with other races. So, again, original home planet destroyed, but these things they descended from told them, go here. They did. Technology was to a degree, more advanced than them at that point in time, and they just settled in, rather than conquer it. So they started out, would be considered technological advance during a time period where humans would have been in their cave huddling time period. But they kind of plateaued with their society and technology, and they got stability and balance because they had some near-apocalyptic disasters. And that's kind of the reason behind them being at this level for a very long period of time and then traveling to another world where they're like, oh crap, these people advanced far beyond us. Because humans and others didn't plateau. They oftentimes look to the past for answers based on their culture. And their homeworld's records extend further back into the gap than any other pack words. And this does mean anybody that's a big historian then respects their history, because they have a very extensive history they still have, even back before the gap. Again, though, because the gap has caused this disconnect to a lot of history, for most, their culture does seem a little backwards to outsiders. They do hide one's mouth, all but their most intimate companions, and they have a belief in the superior dignity of wielding melee weapons over projectile or energy ones. They're generally matriarchal and nomadic, organized into these great families that are kind of clans and sub-clans, with individual and family units roaming whatever whims takes them. They believe that a lot of others don't understand their personal dignity, so they don't really teach their customs to outsiders because they don't feel others would respect them anyway. And that does lead to them seeming mysterious and standoffish, but it's sort of like a misbelief that teaching you my culture and my ways means you're just going to disrespect them, because it's happened a bunch. So each one has their own set of unique traditions that combines common rituals with ones they create. And you gain more and more traditions over your lifetime. And a lot of older Kashathas will spend a lot of time honoring their own pasts. And they have a time period where your personal customs are kind of engraved, called the tempering, when it's a year-long walkabout that they all undergo during adolescence. They're encouraged to test their limits, learn from other cultures, do inappropriate behavior so that you appreciate the values, traditions, and why you would not do those in the future. So custom is a very important thing for them. Get bonuses to strength and wisdom, penalty to intelligence, 4 hit points. They're good with deserts. They can move through deserts, hills, and mountains very quickly. They have 4 arms, so they can hold 4 pieces of equipment. It doesn't increase number of attacks, but they have like a multi-dexterity kind of thing, They all get bonuses to culture checks because they have a knowledge of their own histories, and they're very graceful, too. Again, alternate ability adjustments and racial traits if you want to check them out. Vital statistics, all that stuff. But that's the Kasatha in a nutshell. Moving on, we have the Lashunta. Innate psychic abilities is an important thing about them. That's the one thing you can kind of say. They're scholars, enlightened warriors. They have 2 specialized sub-races that exist. The Korshira and the Damanya. So, they come from Castrovel, which is a predator-rich planet, and they have adaptive genetics that allow their children to develop one of 2 subspecies depending on what's going on during their puberty. There's tall, intellectual, adaptable Damia that are usually the political leaders and ambassadors, and the short, burly, headstrong Korshira, who are great warriors and explorers. They both have short antennae that they're focused their natural telepathy on, and color swirl and raised markings on their face that are unique to each individual. They are found to be pretty attractive because they have natural pheromones and almost perfect symmetry on their bodies. And many humanoid races find both of their subspecies, because of this, attractive, even unnervingly sometimes. It's sort of like, why are you attractive to me? You know, it's like, you're very alien to me, why? Kind of thing. Sometimes that just happens because of these combination of features. They do have the same genetics, though. So it doesn't matter the subspecies, they can have children with each other. A Lamashtu child will inherit complexions and certain features from their parents. Subspecies is not one of them. Again, depending on what's going on in their puberty, will determine that. So there's psychic ritual and force of will techniques applied at puberty. Modern Lamashtu can actually master which subspecies a child will grow into. Basically activating certain genetic markers during that time. There are plenty of Lamashtu city-states which do tend to steer children in particular directions, with government-run aptitude tests and stuff like that. The thing is, most Lamashtu believe, very passionately, the child has the right to choose. So it's one of those things now is, rather than during the old days where situation will determine it, nowadays it's sort of like you're reaching that age. Most Lamashtu would have their children say, which one do you want to be? You know, do you want to be someone that's great being a fighter or explorer? Do you want to be something that's more of like a political person, an ambassador? You know, what kind of, honestly, what subspecies do you want to be because it's better suited for what job you want to be is a strange kind of thing, but they allow that a lot more time. So, the thing is, in ancient history, also, their divided gender roles led to subspecies almost universally correlation with gender. That was a thing that actually happened. But Lamashtu culture has grown more egalitarian. So, right now, though, one subspecies would have been one gender, pretty much exclusively the other, nowadays the balance is pretty equal. You'd find male and female of both subspecies. So, they are, again, from Castrovel. They're organized independent city-states, protecting against the apex predator of the planets. With magical portals, they've ventured to other worlds, even before space travel, and they do have close ties with a lot of societies on Akaton. They, oftentimes, most of their city-states will be meritocracies. Leaders have been more women and are usually Damia, except during war times. But both Damia and Korasha Lamashtu see education as the highest calling. Lamashtu scholars are found throughout the solar system. military service is valued since Castroval's incredibly dangerous. It's filled with horrible, deadly, murderous burgers, And because there isn't, one major government, each settlement needs their own warriors to protect them from the jungle monsters. Most soldiers, the most iconic is the, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Shotalashu Cavalry, which are light armored riders who form telepathic bonds and take their names from their Saurian mounts. So self-improvement, honor, communal defense are big things for their people. Now, if you are a Karasha, bonuses to charisma, strength, penalty to wisdom. If you're a Damaya, bonuses to charisma, intelligence, penalty to constitution. 4 hit points either way. So the big thing is, they're dimorphic, which means you choose if you're a Karasha or a Damaya when you are building your character. They do get spell-like abilities, Daze, Psychotic Hand, with a cast level equal to your level. They have a limited amount of telepathy within 30 feet, as long as you do share a language, though. They can converse telepathically with multiple creatures, kind of listening to multiple people speaking. And they get a bonus to some skills of their choice because they are very student-oriented, very learning. Again, there are some alternate agility adjustments, which still vary depending on if you're Damia or Karasha, and some alternate racial traits you can always look into. We shall keep going with the Vesk. I'll switch over to a Vesk picture here for you. Where's the Vesk? That's a Shirren. That's a Vesk. Do I have a Shirren open? I skip over it in my things. Oh no, I did skip over Shirren. I switched to them and skipped over. Yep, Shirren then. Hi, insect people. So, these beings were once part of a hive mind of basically locust-like predators that attacked the galaxy. But recently, their hive mind has broke. So now they're a race of telepaths, kind of addicted to their own individualism. They still like the idea of community, harmony with others, but they're no longer part of the hive mind, and they enjoy this ideal of individualism for their kind. So the Swarm basically was a race going from world to world, consuming all they encountered, some kind of Borg-like, except they don't assimilate, they eat. Probably closer to the Independence Day aliens, I would say. But some generations ago, there was some kind of mutations basically caused a large sub-colony to break from the hive mind, and every member gained a sense of self. This individualism caused them to reject the Swarm's consumption, and they formed the new race of the Shirrens, and settled in the pack worlds. They're anthropods, they've got exoskeletons, large compound eyes, sensitive antennas. They, like many arthropodian races, they walk upright, manipulate arms with 3 clawed hands. They have 2 sets of main limbs and 2 sets of smaller limbs in their thorax. They're often displayed, but they are referred to as mating arms. They're kind of weak, only used for ceremonies and reproductive purposes. They actually don't see using them for mundane activities at all, because they see that as a grotesque and shameful thing. Become independent like the Borg. So, they have 3 sexes: male, female, and host. So the male and female provide the eggs and sperm. The host incubates the fertilized eggs, while adding a little bit of their own genetic material and immunities. In some societies, a single host queen incubates for many partners and is considered the true parent, while in others, 3-party marriages are common. Young spend the first 2 years as a tiny worm-like larva. They're often carried around in protective containers, kind of letting them see the world while keeping them safe. So, interesting reproduction for their species. So, the thing is, though, the Shirrens don't even know where the swarm first evolved. It's a vast biological colony fleet that travels from stars to stars for ages, doesn't keep track of such things. Splitting from the swarm, they scatter to a number of nearby systems. This contingent found their way to the Pack Worlds, making first contact with the Versiite Aethership crew and setting up a colony in Versi's parched Fulbright region, and since then spreading throughout the Pack Worlds. So, again, individualism is the main thing that they believe in. Effectively, you know, once they left the swarm, they assumed a little bit of control over their own neurological pleasures and pain systems, which they were formally directed by. Basically, when they were this hive mind swarm, their pleasure and pain centers would be used that the hive mind would control the individual. Once you break away, they kind of have a little bit of control like that over that. And so now, even generations later, making choices from yourself can flood them with basically pleasure. It's not always beneficial, but Shirrens can drug themselves by basically being option junkies, making a sequence of trivial decisions, and just, you know, making little bits of endorphins by like, oh, I want to do that, that, and that, and that. Oh, yeah, man, I'm making choices. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing that's happened to them because of their history. An interesting thing, I should actually say. Weird's not the right word. Interesting. That's the thing is, too, you know, freedom is a big choice for them, and it comes true, especially in regard to things like religion, because, you know, your afterlife and how you spend that is one of the more important choices, so it becomes a very important choice, a big endorphin hit for them. The thing is, though, they did evolve from a hive-based creature, so they do remain very communal, even by human standards. Even when they're working with other species, they basically make foster communities, have teamwork, and they always want to do what's best for their group. The problem with that is, unfortunately, they have a huge loyalty, a utilitarian emphasis on the greater good of the group, can lead them down questionable paths. So, bonuses to con, wisdom, penalty to charisma. They have 6 hit points. Their antenna gives them a blind sense up to 30 feet. If they're within an area of an ally, their communalism gives them a bonus. They can re-roll a single attack roll or skill check twice and take the higher result once per day. Basically giving them the advantage from 5th edition. They're always eager to learn about new cultures and societies. They get some bonuses to culture and diplomacy. And they also, similar to the Lashunta we talked about, have a limited telepathy, 30 feet anybody they can share a language with, and multiple people at once. So that is the Shirren. Now, we talk Vesk. Reptilian. They're predatory and warlike as they appear. Muscular, thick scales, kind of short, sharp horns. They hail from a star system that is close to the Pack Worlds. They sought to conquer, subdue stellar neighbors. They had done that with any races in their own system. But after a threat that came to both them and those they were battling in the Pack Worlds came together, they unified into alliance that the Vesk people have been in since then. There's a greater threat, and it's sort of like, I would say, next-gen Klingons a little bit, you know, where there's a peace for now kind of thing. But, you know, things could change. So they're about 7 feet tall, muscular, scaly. Even though they go to technology, they still have thick claws, teeth of a predator, and they enjoy intimidating softer races with their teeth and claws. They have powerful tails used for balance, and some martial arts actually incorporate tail flaps that they have. Small horns are on the skulls of both of their sexes and protrude from their lower jaw as bony beards. Females are often larger than their male counterparts. Where males are various shades of greens, females often have vibrant molted colors that are considered an indicator of both health and attractiveness. So they first arose from a single world around a sun and then spread to all the others around their planets. Basically turning all the competitor races into vassals into the empire they called the Veskarium. These other worlds no longer have their even names, only numbers correlation to their distance from the sun, such as Vesk 6. The exception to this is the Vesk Prime, their ancestral homeland, which is the seat of their government and high society. So their society is organized, militaristic. Merchants and others with peaceful professions can advance economically still. Political power has basically been those that are best in armed conflict for the Vesk. It doesn't necessarily come through military service or even to the benefit of the Veskarium. Many attain this elevation social status by mercenary work, dueling, security, exploration missions, things like that. They are obsessed with conquest, dominance, and social rank. They do still have, very Klingon-like, a sense of honor and pride in fulfilling their agreements and treating subordinates of all races fairly. So it's just because we conquered you, it still means you're under us and we should treat you fairly. So that is a good thing about them. They treat everybody they conquer basically fairly. You're still our subordinate, but you'll be treated equally as all of them. They're stoic, taciturn with strangers, but they do have emotion that they can have in private or in the heat of battle. They tend towards efficient, respectful, law-abiding. Those are important factors in their society. Insults or violation of customs often trigger blood debt, is the thing. So, yes. And even outside their home system, many still enjoy following the rules and have their own code of honor. Morally, they're not really neither good or evil. You know, they have their way of doing things. So basically, the swarm was what drove them together, if you're wondering. So fighting off the swarm and keeping the pack worlds safe in their area of space safe was basically what kept them and their what was called the Silent War. They're like skirmishes that they were doing with the pack worlds and other Sarbai system from continuing indefinitely. So, yes. If you're playing a Vesk, you get bonus to Strength and Constitution, penalty to Intelligence, you get 6 hit points. They use armor in a way that complements their physiology, giving a bonus that they're better with armor. They have bonuses against fear, low light vision, and they do have some natural weapons. Basically, they're good with an unarmed strike. So, yeah. And again, alternate ability scores and a bunch of alternate traits that you can look into. And we have one more for the core book, and then we'll kind of quickly go over the legacy races before talking about a few extra ones, about a dozen or so extra ones. Anyway, the Ysoki, it's Y-S-O-K-I, Ysoki, Ysoki, I don't know. They're small, often overlooked by other races, because they're larger. But they have wit and technological presence, and they've spread throughout the solar system. They add to the old adage: every starship needs a few rats, basically. So they're about 3 to 4 foot tall. They're basically humanoid rats. They've got fur, long incisors, kind of twitching noses, prehensile tails that help keep their balance and maneuver themselves in 0G, small dexterous hands that are great for working with delicate electronics, a keen nose that allows them to identify complex chemicals by cell, and male and females are difficult for other races to tell apart, as they have similar body types and similar fashions. So their term originates from Akaton, where their species has a vibrant, respected culture. Populations of rat folk, as they're sometimes called, existed on several other worlds from millennium before spaceflight became common. Whether it's convergent evolution or they have a common ancestry, no one really knows. But most of the cultures now identify as part of the overall species of Ysoki. The wide variation in heredity okay. They have a wide variation in heredity, which makes ethnicity and often immediately family connections kind of impossible to determine by sight or genetics oftentimes. Even more so, they still try to get the respect of larger races anyway. So the society is chaotic and free-willing. They have a typical warren is full of half-finished products, multiple ones talking over each other. Regardless of their role in whatever society they are, all of them have a deep love for technology and gadgets. Some of them have the engineer's love of taking machines apart, or the soldier's appreciation for armor construction. They take on roles and societal niches that other species find unpleasant, with being junkers, going to the inners of the ship. And it's not due to a lack of pride, but basically an abundance of thereof. They are sure of their own worth, that, living in subpar conditions doesn't shame them at all. Larger races tend to underestimate them or pick on them, but they are fiercely loyal to friends and family, both Ysoki or otherwise. And they will oftentimes do anything that they anything they see as a gross injustice. They will throw themselves teeth first at the problem and try to overcome it. Consequences be damned. So, yeah. There's another picture of one. Ysoki gets bonuses to Dex and Intelligence, penalty to Strength, has 2 hit points. They have cheeked pouches that they can hold about 1 bulk in their cheek pouches, and they can transfer a single object between hand and cheek as a swift action, and they can disgorge the entire contents of their pouch to the ground into their square as a move action that does not provoke an attack of opportunity. They have Dark Vision. They have Moxie, which gains them some bonuses and such, and they are Scroungers, giving them some skill bonuses. So, an interesting one there with our good friends Siratfo Kisuki. Let's talk about some of the legacy species here. Of course, with dwarves. Yes. The thing is, again, dwarfs came from Galarian. It's disappearances, because they were, used as furnaces, were oftentimes... Oh, God damn it. Image. There we go. Subterranean stuff like that. There's a lot of loss as to it. And they keep what knowledges and stuff they do alive in song and legend. And they no longer worship Torag, if you know about the dwarfs of Galarian and Pathfinder. They worship Angarad, who, according to Dwarven history, his worshippers were left in Angrad's hand during the gap so he could stand guard over Galarian wherever it is now. So they don't worship Torag anymore, they worship Angarad, but their legends say that Torag left them, basically, with Angarad so that he could watch over Galarian wherever it is. So you find dwarves in Absalon Station, where the guilds and clan headquarters. They will appear on city-sized Star Citadel ships. It's rare that they're on other worlds, though you can find small groups of them in places and pack worlds, extrasolar colonies. They like asteroid mining a lot, and their Star Citadels are common in Dysphoria. Yep. Anyway. There is still some belief because of the quest for the sky that was in the original Torag and dwarfs going from underground to the surface, that some dwarfs feel that the quest for the sky was not fulfilled, and they explore the pack worlds and beyond because they think that going to the surface was only the first part of the quest, and Torag now wants them to find a specific alien sky that dwarfs were destined to be under. So it's not the quest for the Galarian sky as it was the quest for some sky somewhere. You get Con Wisdom and Penalty to Charisma, 6 hit points, Dark Vision, Slow but Steady, so they're 20-foot land speed, Stone Cutting, Traditional Enemies, so they still get bonuses against Goblinoids and Orcs and Giants and stuff, and Weapon Familiarity, very basically Dwarf. Elves are still around. Hey, Elves! The gap is probably hit the elves the hardest out of all of these. That's to say, especially for coming back from it, because they're slow to adapt and recover. The thing is, shorter-lived races wouldn't have known nothing of another way of life, so aren't really affected by the loss of history. But the elf generations whose lives extended back into the gap are kind of broken and confused because of a blank centuries in their own lives and memories. Again, they're long-lived enough that that happened. And the thing is also, the leaders charged with trying to piece together societal history from scraps came to a very grim conclusion. During the gap, they've been betrayed by another, but who that was is unclear. And the answer was scrubbed by malicious attempt or by the Gaft itself. So, a lot of elves from across the system retreated to their home on Sorvinyan and Castrovel and basically dug in. And many elven families already on Castrovel resented the chaos and upheaval of the sudden flood of refugees. So elves tend to be very reclusive, xenophobic now and day. They still have starships traveling the void, trading with other worlds. Largely all elven crew. Most of them live with their own kind in Sorvinyan or elf enclaves that are still on other worlds. But there are adventurous and rebellious individuals who choose to live among other lives. And they're called the Forlorn, because they don't have elven companionship and because they outlive the other races they want to hang with. So, elves did embrace technology and the security it brings, those important things, but also have a deep affinity for magic. So, technomancers are big, operatives, mystics. Magic lore is very important. And Sorvian continues to try to strengthen itself and make itself very powerful. And hey, Drow still exist. They're on Apostate and mine alien technology from the world's interior, making them very respectable and feared arms dealers. But normal elves and Drow despise each other. Yeah. Bonuses to Dex and Int, penalty to Con, 4 hit points. Got the Elven immunities, Elven magic, keen senses, low light vision that shows up in normal Pathfinder, pretty much. Gnomes. It's probably going for about 2 hours, we think. So, again, immigrants of the from the First World, as if you've seen my Gnome episode, which is probably pretty recently that I did that, in comparison to this one. Had a tumultuous time, and evolved significantly from accounts found in pre-GAP records. So that's the thing is, pre-GAP records show gnomes very differently than they are now. So now they fall into two ethnicities, Fey Childrens and Bleachlings. Fey Children are basically physiologically and socially close to their otherworldly heritage, and intensely mercurial, possessive, wild whimsy, ravenous appeal for adventure. Bleachlings are believed to be the descendants of those that survived the virulent gnome plague called the bleaching. To this day, threatens to drain color and life from the Fey Children gnomes that don't seek out new experiences. Bleachlings are born with monochromatic features, palettes ranging from black to white to brown to gray. They're usually more even-tempered than their Fey child cousins, and with kind of only half-deserved reputation for dourness. Yeah. That joke. Basically, Bleachlings were kind of around, but it's the true Bleachling adaptation as their own subspecies. It's unsure if it was experimental, intentional genetic solution to the disease that was going on, some kind of freak mutation, a blessing of a deity, something else, but something happened during the gap, and the thing is, Fey Children gnomes are trying to see if they could recreate what happened to create the Bleachling subspecies, while Bleachling gnomes just pass their immunities to their children, and those of mixed relationships found a new subrace that will still currently a minority is poised to someday completely erase their parent race, for better or worse. So, basically what's going to be happening is, which we don't really have stats for, is that Bleachlings are the adapted immunity, Fey Children are still around, but when you have mixed relationships, you have something that's both of them. And most likely will be the futures of gnomes. So yeah. If you're a Fey Child, you get bonuses to Con, Charisma, penalty to Strength. If you're a Bleachling, you get bonuses to Con, Intelligence, penalty to Strength. 4 hit points. They're curious. Dimorphic, which just tells you the bonuses that the Fey Child gets, the Bleachling gets. Eternal Hope, bonuses against fear, and can, once per day, after rolling a 1, re-roll it for a second result. Some Gnome Magic, and Low Light Vision. And you have some alternate racial traits still. And there are some ability adjustments still, too. That do exist for gnomes. Half-elves are still a thing. Yeah. So, they still exist. There's still, like, a lot of the things that were going on with half-elves on original Golarion in the future now. The big thing is on Sorvian, in Castrovel, the Elven homeland, the plan is, the area is open to half-elves. The government's blood right policy initiates anyone with discernible elven blood to return to the homeland. There has been some controversial for high-profile conflicts with a half-elf dissident group that resent, basically, they are considered second-class citizens there. They're pretty common at Absalon Station, basically a place where elven emissaries and humans live and work together in large numbers, and they can occasionally pop up. Settlements of them that are prominent are rare. Some half-elf homesteaders have townships sprung up on some of the comfortable edges of Versi's Terminator line, and a colony on Shavana. They're very cultural chameleons. So, yeah. And that's about all we need to talk about with them. Plus 2 to ability skill, 4 hit points. They're adaptable, so they get skill focus, elven blood, keen senses, low light vision. Half-elves. let's go farther into halflings. Halflings are still around. They are a common race in the pack worlds and colonies, spreading alongside of humans. There is a popular legend that halflings were the first to spread beyond Galarian into the stars to colonize new worlds. They are people that kind of don't have a homeland, so they've peppered the void with colonies, caravan fleets, ships for different makes, models, and eras. They ply trade, see new sites, swap stories, trade foreign goods. They're oftentimes because they wander a lot, small stature, they're targets for raiders and conquerors, but they face a lot of harsh challenges and have a lot of cooperation, optimism, and a gift for subterfuge that keeps them going. They don't mistrust technology in general, but they do have a kind of askance to cybernetic implants and biotechnological augmentations. They feel that natural physiology is as perfect as it can be. So those things, they don't look down on those that use those items, but, finding a halfling that has dermal plating or retinal reflectors is very rare, Though, if you accidentally lose a limb, they might consent to something like a cybernetic replacement. Many of them would rather spend the extra credits to make a prosthetic that looks as much like the lost limb as possible, though. So it's sort of like, I might get a cybernetic replacement, but I'm going to make it look like my arm. So, yeah. So halflings are around also. Bonuses to Dex Constitution, bonuses to Dex Charisma, penalty to Strength, 2 hit points. They're small, they got the halfling luck bonus, keen sense, sneakies, and short footage. Very standards there. Our good friends, the Half-Orcs, are still around too. The thing is, pure-blooded orcs are pretty rare nowadays amongst the pack worlds. So most Half-Orcs are children of other Half-Orcs. That's kind of where they come about nowadays. So it's sort of like, though originally a union between humans and orcs, because orcs are kind of very rare nowadays, half-orcs become their own thing almost, their own species, because you only have each other to be with. A little taller than humans, muscular build, greenish-gray skin, the promoting canines. They are still uncommon in the pack worlds. The highest concentration living in the caverns of apostates, basically as unwilling servants of Drow who conquered the planet. Those that are free half-orcs aren't really treated as much better. Basically, as prejudice against orcs from pre-Gap time are still there. So many of them become criminals that reinforce the negative cycle. Those that do find acceptance tend to be within conclaves of their own kind, or with things like androids or other marginalized groups. Militaristic orders are a very big place for them to turn to. So being soldiers, operatives, androids, envoys are great places for them. So yeah. Bonus to 2 to any ability score of your choice. 6 hit points, dark vision, they're intimidating. They got the orc ferocity, and they're self-sufficient. Alright, let's move on to the big list of species outside of the core rulebook ones for a couple more. We got a bunch of these, maybe about a dozen of these or so. Aasimar. Hey, it's Aasimar. So basically, a lot of extraplanar beings can infuse their bloodlines and have a side effect to this. Aasimar and Tieflings, Celestials and Fiends respectively, are the big common ones. So, because of curiosity, humans basically... They do sex with things, and outsiders and other things, so... Planar signs living in the pack worlds tend to be descended from humans nowadays. Basically, there are other planar signs, but Aasimar is one of them. Because humans become less populous, though, Planar Scions can be descended from other races, are more numerous now than they used to be. They can pass from a member of the humanoid's parent race, but you've got otherworldly futures, kind of things like that. Depending on where you're at, if a society's insular tradition bound, signs of being plain touch can be either a blessing or a death sentence, depending on the traditions. So yeah. Aasimar get +2 to Charisma, 4 hit points. They've got Dark Vision, Celestial Radiance, Celestial Resistance, and Skilled. And I will talk about some of the other Planar Scions when they pop up in the list. We'll go alphabetically. We have the... so this is not the next one. I should probably actually turn this off. I'll just turn this off for a second because I don't have an image of this one! I wasn't able to find it on short notice, this morning. Oh, it wasn't short notice. I was looking around for a while. Couldn't find one online. Anyway, the Alkainan are badger-like humanoids with metallic fur who have recently taken up residence on the arboreal planet of Volshnip in near space, somewhere near the Veskarium. Mythology speaks of their homeworld, a realm of naturally occurring metallic spines somewhere in the vast, and they fled a great evil none can specify. They have 3 castes: the Bagaja, who are the custodians of their settlements, the Leta, who take to the stars to meet and trade with other species, and matriarchs, female Alkainan, who are leaders and ministers of marriage and other spiritual matters. Most matriarchs remain on Volensp. A few travel with Leda on their chrome-plated starships. Their physiology depends on the type of metals consumed by their ancestors on their homeworld, granting unusual coloration of their fur and unique defenses. Bonus to strength, constitution, penalty to wisdom, 4 hit points, low light vision. The metallic bloodline, which is either ferrous, non-ferrous, or sky metal. And they got some natural weapons that do an unarmed strike that deals lethal slashing damage. So yes. Metal Badger Folk. Now we turn this one back on. Should pop up. I want this. Image is not showing up. Oh, that's not. That's, that's the one I want. Have I been the wrong one all the entire time? Might have been the wrong one the entire time. Anyway, the Amrantah. Again, I'm gonna start with this because I usually preface this anytime I'm trying to pronounce things. I'm very bad at just randomly pronouncing things. I try, but I will make mistakes. So if I make a mistake, I apologize. I'm trying my best because I don't speak these names out loud a lot or ever. So the Amrantah are living machines made of advanced magitech and imbued with the souls of a long-living dead person from Amra. They're artificial beings, humanoid appearance, most often resembling humanoids made of metal, with blush energy visible from their bodies. They can modify their bodies when access to a ghost forge and take full advantage of this fact. Some take on appearance of draconic or bestial humanoids. Others adopt blank-faced enigmatic appearances. They often choose a gender fitting their soul's identity. And they shape their bodies to reflect their genders, while others experiment with or reject gendered traits. So, they emerge from ghost forges with the default imprint left behind by the machine's gap-shattered programming. Originally, this was meant to grant the Amrantah a portion of their people's knowledge. This process instead causes Amaranths to emerge with naive, innocent, or somewhat underdeveloped personalities, though each is still influenced by their pre-imprint personalities. They tend towards, Their culture is largely defined by their environment. Pleasure cities of Amaran offer Amaranths an endless play of distractions. Many have short attention spans, though engrossing tasks can still wrap them as necessary. Because of their origins, many of them casual relationship with religion. When an Amrantah dies, regardless of their distance from a ghost forge, their souls travel back to be born. While this offers immortality of a sort, they no longer have the mastery of magic tech necessary to reprogram the ghost forges. Thus, when souls are reborn this way, they're reprinted, emerging as a blank mind and personality. So most Amranths have a healthy respect for death, not the same kind of fear other species do, and they see the process of reincarnation as a doorway to new adventure. So after they live a full life, they see death with little fear. They're usually 5 to 7 feet tall, and physical components will degenerate over time. Usually mean they live about a century. Most of this constitution, charisma, penalty to wisdom, 6 hit points. They have a constructed body that's magical, technologically enhanced. They have an internal integrated standard data jack and personal comm unit. They've exposed souls, meaning their penalties to necromancy and susceptible mind-affecting effects like other humanoids. They're living machines. They have a constitution score, benefit from natural or magical hearing, can be raised from the dead. They don't have the construct immunities and are only immune to disease. They can eat or drink, and they must rest and can dream. But they don't have to breathe or suffer environmental effects of a vacuum. And they have a shapeable hold. So, that is the Amaranth. Here we go. We'll move on to the Anassanoi. The Anassanoi. They come from the star Anassanoi. Anassan. They left in a generation ship named the Kalan Al. They have the city of Kalano. Anyway, you can look that up for more information on that kind of stuff. Yeah, they reference a place to look up more stuff on them. Great. Thanks, Archives of Nethys. I forgot that they did that. They're typically staunchly loyal, sympathetic, elusive fiends. By human standards, their body language and facial expression lack animation or emotion. They have 3 eyes, 2 vertical mouths. That's the right picture, right? Yep, cool. They're natural telepaths. They're extremely open when computing telepathically. Suffusing their exchange with their feelings, their physical gestures lack. Their openness translates into emotional honesty. They kind of get a sense of who they are when speaking with one of them, basically. Anyone that wants to avoid this openness can learn to suppress it by becoming practiced in deception, but very few of them do. They're about 8 feet tall, slender, weigh about 200 pounds, and live about 150 years, maturing at 25. Bonus to wisdom, charisma, penalty to constitution, 4 hit points. They have a blind sense out to 30 feet, low light blindness. They are open, meaning you get +6 to sense motive checks, but you're communicating with telepathically. They've got the telepath range to 30 feet, and they've got a 3rd eye, which gives them some bonuses. Let's talk about the Astrazoan. Their origins are unclear. They don't really have a homeworld to call their own. They've dispersed throughout the pack worlds and beyond in the galaxy's cosmopolitan tapestry. They've rarely shown their true form to non-Astrazoans. They mostly live their lives as humans, Lashuntas, Vesk, other pack world creatures, preferring a semblance of anonymity and not wanting to shock their neighbors' humanoid sensibilities with their particular opponents. Yeah, that's a weird one. Thank you. No official or unofficial art. Nowadays, it's been centuries of drift travel and trade, so most humanoids are accustomed to varied life forms, but the Astrazoan still prefer to be secretive. So they get bonuses to Dex, Charisma, Penalty to Constitution, 4 hit points. They can change their form. They look like a medium creature. So basically, they take alternate forms all the time. They do have compression as a special ability. They can compress themselves. Dark vision. They count as both aberrations and humanoids. And anything that targets both of them affect them. And they regain stamina points very rapidly with a rapid revival. I can give a good physical description on this one. Let me just see something here. No, they didn't have that there. Just checking a couple of these. No, okay. When they lie flat on their belly, they resemble a radially symmetrical starfish with 7 limbs, weighing about 180 pounds, a diameter of 9 feet from one tip to the tip of another. They usually walk upright on 5 limbs, standing about 6 feet tall, and the remaining 2 limbs to hold and manipulate objects. Hence our kind of tiny image there. Actually, let's put the larger version of it up there. Right there? Back over it. There you go. There's a larger image of it. The starfish people. Natural skin color varies. Their skin is rough like sandpaper with dermal palpae that can replicate surface textures and colors. Each arm has a large eye embedded about halfway down the length along its backside. The eyes provide limited visual data, and you have to at least orient 4 eyes in the same direction to form a clear image. Their mouth is located at the center of their underside. It's small, retractable beach to tear about tougher foods. Most of their digestion occurs externally, expelling their stomach to envelop food. It's created a powerful enzyme to partially chewed meat. And then they retract their stomach along with the softened food. They're basically starfish people. Except they could shape change. Their skeleton is cartilaginous and can dislocate temporarily, providing some structure and considerable flexibility. And they have jelly-like flesh that consists of long muscle fibers that can dislocate, flow, and realign a new configuration as necessary. They can squeeze through narrow openings and close wounds with ease. Their transformation is rapid, accompanied by audible pops, cracks, as body parts internally detach and reconfigure themselves. It's mildly discomforting, like an invigorating stretch, often followed by adrenaline and endorphins. This can actually develop into a psychological coping mechanism and a mild addiction for some. It's oftentimes, if the Astrazoan has held form for a long time, it's most notably pronounced. So basically, they try to reconfigure themselves a couple of times a year just so they don't get like that sensation too overpowering. The transformation has limits. Unfamiliar limbs aren't functional. They can take a Kasatha's shape, but have limited control over the extra arms, just as taking a strict shape results in flapping wings that aren't strong enough for actual shape. It doesn't change their interior organs, which still resemble blue-grade sacs. They merely relocate and are contorted as new shapes are required. Their anatomy will be reviewed by medical scans. And upon death, their muscles relax, and they will slowly shift back into their natural form. They don't know where they evolved or came from. Likely it's the barren world of apostate, evidenced by the genetic similarities between them and an extinct species known as the Ely, that was once in the apostate's tunnels. They don't have a scattered community at this point in time. Yeah. You can look more into them, but they're starfish people. And that's basically some in-depth description of their existence. You can read more on their homeworld and society and stuff. It's got a pretty good chunk of stuff about them, which is really nice. Here we go. The Astrapis? Yeah, Astrapis. They're an arthropodid species. They awoke from the gap to find themselves the inheritors of a planet-spanning megalopolis, full of amazing feats of technology and bioengineering. They're led by descendants of warrior priest revolutionaries. Their society is heavily regimented. That East Astrapi is assigned a role in the study and maintenance of the immense, complex planet-spanning system, whose surface of understanding the species is only scratched. Space travel carried Asteros far beyond the bustle of Colivere. Some individuals find themselves in different rules and stuff like that at that point in time. They're bipedal anthropods, tough chitinous exoskeletons, wide-spanning insectile winds, mandibles. Their coloration varies, and vanity recoloration is a popular trend among them, with those that resources for custom genetic editing. They carve intricate patterns, pictures, or phrases into their exoskeletons as a method of conveying their individual passions and interests. Those Ataipis of Colvare prefer religious and spiritual poetic prose and geometric patterns, but those living away display carvings varied by any spacer's tattoos. Exoskeleton scrimshaws is displayed as a wearable work of art, as well as a symbol of their identity, social role, and personal goals. They produce honey as a natural waste byproduct that they can excrete out their mouths in a process other species might find off-putting. In their culture, the honey is shared during religious rituals and sampled to express affection between friends. Sometimes their honey is coveted by other species for restorative properties, but consumable safety laws render the sale of honey commercially unavailable in most food markets outside Colvere, regardless of any potential health benefits. They do have some health benefits that's poorly understood by other species. The substance has played a role in their evolution in society before recorded history. They're omnivorous by nature. Many of them prefer fresh fruits and vegetables to improve the flavor and potency of the honey they produce. They have large frames, standing about 6 feet tall, weighing about 120 to 150 pounds. Their biology prioritizes efficient, lightweight structures over muscle. Colvare is the name of their homeworld. It often refers to the planet's single encircling landmass and all-encompassing megalopolis. So it's the city, it's their planet, it's their realm. So, for the gap, nature, technology, and Astrabi have worked together to sustain culture as part of an inexhaustible machine. They've got rooftop groups provide canopy shelters for birds and arboreal fauna. Automated stations carefully monitor artificial reefs for the benefit of the Piscine inhabitants. Immense public zoos house the biodiversity that would be too dangerous for the chaotic to exist unfamiliar. It's a very controlled world. Pest control systems, various things like that. They've got engineering marvels. It's a planet-wide world. Euconopolis, almost. Anyway. A very regimented bureaucracy. If you want to look up their society, it is complex. I will tell you on that one. So go ahead and look it up yourself if you're interested in that. And read up on that. Bonuses to Dex and Wisdom, minus the Strength, 4 hit points. They have a land speed and a fly speed with an average maneuverability. They have a blind sense with scent and dark vision. And they produce honey. And they have a natural weapon. They have natural weapons or natural attacks. This is acid, spit, bite, claw, slam, that they can have. It all works the same, basically, though. And they get some bonus to engineering and mysticism because they're scholars of their homeworld. Alright. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Still 10 more. Woo! Maybe we'll cut off at the C's. I was going to do the C's, but maybe we'll cut off at the B's, just because it already has been an hour and a half. Took a little longer for the legacy races than I thought would. Okay. The Bantrid. So here's our good friend, the Bantrid here. That image a little better? That image is a little better there. So into recently, the Lavarian shepherd moon named Hib was believed to be uninhabited. With rolling hills covered in stubby-like grass protrusions, very few bodies of water, it didn't have a lot of interest to explorers. It didn't have a lot of natural resources and a pervasive stench that issued from the ground, no matter what filtration you had. So no one wanted to go to Hib. So about 5 years, though, a previously unknown machinery under Hib's surface began to stir. All across the moon, apertures opened from the ground, which rolled tall towers and spiring ramps. And unknown creatures emerged from these towers, their visual sensors adjusting to the light of a distant sun. It's a sentient species who call themselves Bantrids, had slumbered in stasis for eons before the ancient computers woke them. Because the gap and faulty data drives, however, they no longer had knowledge of their solar system's current political climate, and no recollection why their people entered stasis in the first place. They could have been hiring from an imminent threat or natural disaster. Others believe that posit the Bantrids were the first sentient species and put them to sleep to wait for others to interact with. They have an unusual anatomy. Their lower halves are nothing more than dense organic spheres. They move by spinning these orb foots using hundreds and thousands of cilia on the undersides of their parietal sheaths that cover the orbs. Their upper torsos are stout columns that taper to slightly to the top. They have no heads of a fashion like humanoids, and they have visual autosensories that are located in the middle of their torsos. Directly under small mouths containing a few teeth made only for chewing fruits and nuts. They have no noses, no sense of smell at all. And near the apex of their torso, they have a pair of appendage that resembles large, flat hands with several thinning fingers. Their skin often bears striped coloration along the length of their torso and the upper limbs. They're curious about the new galaxy they find themselves in, are eager to learn about the other sentient species that inhabit it. Some of them to rush, quite literally, into situations before understanding them. Some Packworld neighbors find this trait endearing and happily bring Bantrids into the business and starship crews. Others are put off by it and their very interesting appearance. Their culture revolves around motion, from their ramped tower dwellings to their treadmill chairs. A Bantrid who isn't moving starts to feel an overwhelming dread akin to claustrophobia. As long as this lasts, the Bantrid will simply leave where they are at a moment, despite the circumstances, if it lasts too long. If a restrained Bantrid will start basically hyperventilating and pass out. They have no gender and reproduce by basically a form of budding, creating tiny Bantrids that form, whose foot orbs have not yet sufficiently developed to allow locomotion. These offspring watch over these Bantrids until they can move, which takes about 5 months. Bonus to Dex and Con, penalty intelligence, 4 hit points. They're small aberrations, no sense of smell, are immune to sensing-based things. They are balanced. Daredevils have dark vision and are swift with a 40-foot land movement. And some alternate racial traits there. And that is our very interesting one there. But let's also talk about the Brathu, early stage. So the Brathus are a sentient aspect of Berthetta's gas giant ecosystem. They're blimp-like creatures vaguely resemblant of a jellyfish with several unusual evolutionary adaptations. They can rewrite their own genetically code instinctively and at will, adjusting their own biology to allow them to manufacture a huge array of substances, and even advanced biotechnology within the crucibles of their own bodies. This ability does make them quite successful in Packworld's economy, and has influenced their culture's understanding of wealth and trade, with most notable adaptation ability to create and combine with others into a larger, hive-minded super-entities. These mergings create not merely amalgams of their component buildings, but entirely new entities with unique and independent consciousness, yet which in turn often disband back into their component individuals after a particular need or threat has passed. So they combine together, see you later, worm, into something to do something, then break apart. They have easygoing culture that's hard for other races to understand. With their frequent merging, their concept of self is kind of nebulous. Young Barathas grew up surrounded by humanoids are an exception. They're better able to appreciate the mindset of creatures who exist in static, solitary configurations, compared to older ones whose early-stage Barathas are more adventurous and individualistic, and their adaptation to humanoid mindset makes it more difficult for them to merge completely with others of their kind. Most early stage grow out of this phase, gaining the ability to fully integrate with others, yet recent generations have seen more and more Barathas deliberately clinging to their juvenile mindsets. While plenty of Barathas remain discrete entities for most of their lives, Barathas near the end of their lives often merge with massive permanent colony entities to serve as corporations, governments, or cultural repositories. Bonus to con wisdom, minus to dexterity. They're medium aberrations. They've got the early stage adaptations. I won't go over fully, but it's a bunch of stats. Floaters, they have no speed, land speed. They just fly. Average maneuverability extraordinarily. Limited telepathy. Strange anatomy, which boasts fortitude, and dark vision. We've got some alternate racial traits you could also check up too. So we'll just do those, and we'll cut off the 3 C's. By C's. Yeah, we'll just do those then to finish up. So a few more. It's a bear! Well, yes. Yes, it's a bear! It's an uplifted bear! They're compared to their mundane counterparts. They're more than simple animals. Those that underestimate them do it at a peril. At some point in the past, the population of bears, story ranging from a group of individuals to several dozens to all bears on a dying planet, were modified to increase their mental capacity, granting them extraordinary intelligence. The details of who modified the bears and why are lost in the gap, with more conspiratorial posts going on. There are those uplifted bears that obsess with uncovering their origins. Others feel that this focus on their past only holds their people back, because now they're smart. They're large magical beasts that, they're large size. They have a climb speed, a ferocious charge, limited augmentation, limited telepathy, low light vision, a natural survivor, natural weapons. They're swift, +2 strength and intelligence, or bonus to strength, intelligence, penalty to wisdom, 6 hit points. So they basically resemble non-sapient bears, but their bodies have been modified along with minds to grant effects. Their forearm claws are more dexterous than those of a normal bear with an opposable thumb. Physical strength of the bear and size. They can be 5 feet tall and 1 all 4s, and when bipedal, stand about 10 feet tall. Short tails, rounded ears, thick coats, a lot like just normal bears. They have the teeth and digestive system common to carnivorous species. They are omnivorous and can subsist in a large variety of diets. Their sense of smell has weakened by being uplifted. They've been drawn to an assemblage of pack-world species, creating a diverse array of features and plagues. Coat colors range from black, brown, blonde, and white, including patterns of those lost Galarian's pandas or Castrovel's sun bears. Some grow a little larger, with massive appetites and thick fur to keep them stay warm in colder climates. Others have bodies more designed for swimming or climbing trees. Others have long tongues for insectivorous diets. Basically, whatever species they may have come from originally, they're comparable with each other, though, still. The process that uplifted them. Their brain structure seems to resist most technological adaptations, though, except for data jacks and custom-designed rigs. Most of these uplifted bears believe that it was intended as protection against external control by whoever modified them, or some sinister message achieving their true form or something. They exist throughout the pack worlds. Forested places are preferred. So, you can look up their homeworld in society. It's a in-depth thing for uplifted bears. Uplifted bears. The Bolida. They're anthropods. Hi, anthropods. We've got another one. They dwell not on the face of the plants they inhabit, but underground, in cave system. So they are a subterranean one. They're oftentimes affected by the heat of the planet's cores because they like to go that deep underground. They're centipede-like and protected from extreme environments by metallic chitinous plates that cover their entire backs from head to tail. This innate armor protects them from subterranean hazards like rock falls, friction from traveling to camp caves. They have many legs, holding the uppermost part of their body to wield weapons and manipulate objects. They thrive in darkness and tend to avoid traveling to the surface. If they do live on a planet's surface or space station, they prefer nocturnal schedules. Sunlight blinds them, but they don't have protective eyewear. It was only a few decades ago that off-world explorers on their home planet of Zaphagia first encountered the modest miners were quarrying for unique stones. They assume had no claimant. Their territory were xenophobic, but the meeting was overall amicable. Tense, but amicable. They agreed to a mutual beneficial relationship with the other species, constructing trade agreements, and eventually even adopting common into their lexicon. Throughout the broader galaxy now knows their existence for only a few decades. They've been around for millennia, unconcerned with and largely unaware of the outside world. They've independently developed their own technology, which a lot of is analog and kind of considered primitive by a lot of other races. And they dig in for resources, excavate cavernous dwellings. Those that travel to the galaxy are allowed aloof, blowing off attempts at personal friendship by members of surface races. They dismiss the capricious of light dwellers. They like the time alone with others of their own kind or members of other subterranean races that they can kind of share passion for excavation with. Digging is euphoric for them, and spending a lot of times in creating new tunnels or caves or expanding the population is just something they love. A new settlement can grow from a single cave to hundreds of maze-like tunnels, vast caverns in mere months. They are oftentimes indispensable for acquisition of rare trade minerals because they're good at getting them. And their ability to thrive in deep heat, the heat of deep underground in molten core planets means they're hired on as miners by organizations across the galaxy to excavate places that other races couldn't withstand. They have no discernible sexual dimorphism or gender, each capable of carrying and fertilizing eggs. Oftentimes they will take both roles. They sometimes mate in groups, covering the floors of the nursery caves with eggs and incubating the heat of the depths. They're about 7 feet long, 350 pounds. Bonus to strength and constitution, penalty to dexterity, 6 hit points. They have a land and burrow speed. They have blind sense of vibration, dark sense, and low light vision. Their chitinous planes give them an armor bonus. They can move into a defensive ball. They have a resistance to fire. It does stack with other sources of fire resistance, noted here. A light blindness, and rolling charge. 3 more, and we'll finish up for the day. Whew, the Borai. How good are we going? Yeah, we can finish these quickly. They're an unusual form of corporeal undead. Instead of being a dead body animated by negative energy, a Borai has a mostly dead body that retains this smallest sliver of a soul. The two are inexorably bound, and as the body draws vitality from the soul, while the soul uses the body to remain in the material plane. Some are a result of partially botched resurrection attempts, either magically or technology, while others were people who were simply too stubborn to die when their time came. They appear much they did in life. Their skin has become pale and fragile, dark veins of negative energy across their bodies, visual signs of undead, correction between flesh and spirits. They still need to eat, breathe, and sleep like a living creature, but they age at radically slow rates, allowing them to live for a few additional centuries. After a length of time, their physical body deteriorates to such a degree that their soul can no longer sustain it. It then dies as living creatures do, and is destroyed as undead creatures are. Souls are scholars are divided as whether these souls move on to their appointed afterlives or simply dissipate into nothingness. Mystical attempts to contact these souls have unfortunately failed, leaving researchers frustrated. They can be created anywhere. They can be created almost anywhere. The highest birth rate of Boreas is on the planet Yox, as many undead who live on the planet experiment with necromancy, undead strengthening science. Those who come into existence tend to migrate to Eox, as they're often viewed with fear and mistrust on other worlds. Prejudice basically drives them to the dead planet, but there's also prejudice there, too, because they require the same comforts as a living creature, and Eox is a dead world. A few Boreas formed disparate former races have banded together in small coalition to petition the Pact Council for official right for an asteroid or small room to create a home planet. So basically they're trying to get the Pact Council to be like, hey, we have our own place now. We do exist. Some embrace their disconcerting aspects as enforcers or bodyguards. Others seek to erase their undead nature by holding diplomatic positions, taking jobs that interact with the public. Few attempt to hide their appearance with cosmetics and body-covering clothing. Bonus to Constitution, Charisma, penalty to Wisdom, 6 hit points, Dark Vision. They are deathly, immune to negative energy, and get bonuses against a bunch of different things. They are Living Shell. They count as living for purpose of what can affect you, such as healing magic. If destroyed, it can be brought back to its normal undead state by specific spells, such as Raid Dead, that restore life to his body as if they were alive. And they have old talents and resist energy drain. Alright. The Brakim. They're native to Borton 2 and live in small tribal groups. A planet-wide war that occurred during the gap reduced their numbers and left their world in a radiated wasteland where the Brakims survive, organized into scavengers, nomadic scavengers. The tribe battled each other across the blasted desert and ruined cities. When the Aslanti landed there, the planet was stripped of its natural resources. The Star Empire engaged in a few brief skirmishes to prove their supremacy, built a small monitoring station, and left. Ever since then, a city has grown up around the monitoring station. The settlement's citizens are not Barakims, but outcasts from the Star Empire who see Portland 2 as a refugees. Criminal enterprises have since flourished on the planet, and all sorts of scoundrels have found a place on Borton 2. A few Barakims head such organizations and have used the wealth to gain to move off-world. They're adaptable, industrious, resourceful. Their ability to modify and detach their limbs provides them with a considerable survival advantage. However, essentials of life on a war-torn world have left them brutish and distrustful, and slow to accept strangers. The opportunity to travel beyond Borton 2 has given a few of them new horizons to explore, although doing so is beyond the means of most of their people. Some that make the leap by hiring on as technicians on Starfish, bound for other Imperial worlds, already used to treating their limbs as tools and extracting useful parts from ancient machines. They're well suited to dealing with technology. They see technology as reliable, practical compared to the potential chaos that magic can incur. They favor hands-on work and are pragmatic to the results, and abstract common with computing and sorcery. Their adaptable methods in forming training, yes. They're about 7.5 feet tall with gangly bodies. And they get bonuses to Dex and Con, penalty to Charisma, 6 hit points. They're Jury Rigger, bonus to Engineering. They got malleable limbs, and they're Wasteland Dwellers, immune to low radiation. Getting some survival bonuses. And finally for today, we'll end up at our little friend here, which I think is little. No, they're medium humanoids, not little. So they are the most peaceful species that hail from Vartuin, a planet near space covered in a vast waterways. They're 5 foot tall mammalian humanoids that resemble otters. They have slightly longer legs that allow them to walk upright. They're adapted at detecting subtle physical and emotional reactions. They're especially skilled at understanding the emotion of others and are talented diplomats. They developed space travel sometime before the gap. They enthusiastically began making expeditions from their homeworld to nearby planets in hopes of learning of their galactic neighbors. They quickly found that their empathic nature allowed them favorable interactions, even with typically aggressive species. they began to intentionally hone this skill into diplomacy. And once they developed drift technology, they were welcomed with open arms at Absalon Station and the pack worlds at large. Now a significant number of Baronais sold their skills as diplomats to other species that require ambassadors, or that would prefer for a Baronais to act on their behalf. They usually work in pairs, knowing that experience and judgment of other Baronais is invaluable. Most of their species allow them to work as duos, even if cases where only a single representative would normally act on behalf of a particular group, such as intergalactic senates. Some partner up with members of other similarly minded species, such as the Valakas, which I think I will talk about much later on. When they find themselves apart from others of their own kind, as their wide travels take them far away from friends and family, their emotion sensitivity extends to their own, which they can sometimes lead to bouts of anxiety or melancholy. To help manage the moods, most of them keep a small token to help keep them calm, focus their emotions, focus their minds at the task. It could be a simple object, a stone, a personal item, an image of a lover, a childhood relic. They might keep multiple items in their favor, choosing a specific one given a certain circumstance. While most find themselves as ambassadors or similar related tasks, there are those that break away from tradition. This happens when they meet individuals who express great joy, excitement, or other some other positive emotion about a profession, crafting, or experience. Their emotional insight can kick into overdrive, causing them to decide to pursue a similar experience themselves. It's not uncommon for a Baronai to meet a spacefarer who just returned from exhilarating adventure and quickly want to become an adventurer themselves. Baronais find themselves especially taken with enthusiastically Shirrens. Many have become early adopters of new technology and lifestyles. Their natural empathy for emotional journeys of others seem to serve them well. It can bring them into conflict. They might compulsively attempt to intervene as a council or intermarry in a case that involves some parties that aren't interested in outside interference. Others might find their well-meaning attempt to help condolences intrusive. It's not uncommon to hear tales about a Baronai companion who are too helpful, insistent on trying to assist someone in a rough emotional state even after being declined repeatedly. In some circles, this can earn them a reputation of nosiness, though very few consider their interest malicious. Bonus to con, charisma, penalty to intelligence, 4 hit points. Bonus to diplomacy, sense motive, dark vision. They've got their favorite object, they can hold their breath, and they are a swimmer. But that's where we will leave it today. We've only gone through B in their list here. B. We'll probably do a couple dozen at a time and try to finish these up eventually with a couple more sessions here and there. I'd much like to push on. I'm approaching that 2-hour mark, and I would rather seize another day when, I'm a little more well-rested and it's not so hot, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I've introduced you just to a few, and as I said, I'm not going into full detail on all of these. Certainly in the core rule books, in expanded material, in Archives of Nethys, you can dive deeper into any of these species and learn more about them, and more why you may want to play them or not, and interests in their unique abilities, things like that. All of them have interesting things about playing them. And I think that's the great thing about Starfinder that's a little different than when we talk about something like Golarion and Pathfinder. Golarion and Pathfinder has kind of set rules for things you can play, and almost Starfinder is just like, you have rules? Nope. Here's the craziness. Let's just go crazy. And I think that's one of the interesting things about it sometimes. Just the go crazy, do whatever kind of species and uniqueness that a lot of them can appear as, that make them kind of unique and interesting and just different. Starfinder is almost more experimental with what you can play, and I think that's a very big advantage of it, the different various alien species and stuff like that. Anyway, so I will leave it here. We'll do more of these in the future, more Starfinder stuff in the future. I hope everybody is having yourself a great day. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about Starfinder and stuff like that. I will be back tomorrow for more stuff. I will be back, of course, if you're watching on Twitch, if you're watching on YouTube. My tabletop streams are Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Great places to check things out are, of course, you can check me out Discord and Twitter for information. You can, of course, always join me live, join me on YouTube. Great support on YouTube would be subscribing, liking, commenting, Twitch, following. Up to you where you want to go with all these different things and stuff like that. I think we started out everything. I'm getting a little tired. But I'm going to say, honestly, bye for now, everybody. Check out everything. And I'm just going to say, farewell. Have a good one. Goodbye.